This I don't know what's happening today. I'm not a fan today. I was a fan in the 80s. So
Hmm.
everything, all the art styles and the animations and the comic books and everything that you see is really just a throwback to the things I grew up on. And when
What's going to everybody's Webster Style, the man, the voice, the fragrance. And you guys know I'm a humongous blurred. I'm always grateful to have time to speak to other blurs and creators on this podcast. And today we have Hotep. Hotep is the creator of Black Lions and Cubs. Hotep, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. I tell people, man, this and when I greet people for this year, I don't greet them Happy New Year. I greet them Happy You Year
I like
because
that.
this is
I like
your
that.
year, just like I feel like it's my year. So I'm feeling really good, my brother.
I'm good. I'm glad and I'm happy to hear that. Now, I have a lot of questions because when it was brought to my attention, someone who have watched anime since Robotech. Well, actually, before that.
Mm,
So we're talking about probably what, four or five. The Orbots. I probably saw the syndication. Transwa Z. So I've
mm,
been a fan of anime since I was a wee lad growing up in Baltimore,
mm,
and to see this. This came across my desk as well as we had Black Sands going on. Then another guy I've talked to before in the past, Maurice Manda, he's doing his own thing with HBCU superheroes. So are there a lot of creators out there who are really pushing to infiltrate that market with having, I won't say Afrocentric, but really anime that caters to a broader demographic, but also looking to say African history as well. Tell me about how you came up with the idea of Black Lion and Cubs.
man, well, I have to give all credit to my children. Although I've recently hit a benchmark in life. I just turned 50. I've recently become a father for the first two times in my late 40s. So I have a 2-year old and a 4-year old. And I'm not sure if you're a parent, but anyone that is has probably gone through this experience where you have new life and you want to share everything that you came up on when you were a child, when you were
Right.
their age. And so I've had that blessing of an experience to be able to share with my children the things I grew up on. And I came up in the 80s. My childhood, the main era that I remember is the 80s. So when I wanted to share things with my children, it was GI Joe, Voltron, Transformers, Thundercats, the original NES, Mega Man, Rygar, comic books, all the things that I was a big fan of during those days. John Byrne, Frank Miller, Todd McFarlane. Those were the things that, and of course, 80s hip hop, golden age hip hop. You see, so it was all those things that I've been experiencing. I've been sharing with my children, and noticed that they took a liking to some of the cartoons. Dungeons and Dragons too. I gotta give a shout out to Dungeons and Dragons. So I used to love that.
Classic.
So, yeah, all the stuff that all the, and I wished for them the experience that we had back then, where you had the joy of the anticipation of waking up early Saturday morning to watch the cartoons, and I feel sorry for young people today where that's been robbed from them.
Yes.
There's no anticipation anymore because all you need to do is hit a button, you can catch everything and watch everything at once. So in any case, I was a father, and I had this opportunity to share with the children the joy of the things that I grew up on. But then also I had a niece who was living in my wife and I's basement. So my niece is obviously a lot younger, and she was sharing with my children some of the anime of today, which I know nothing about. Okay, I don't know anything about that stuff because my days of fandom ended when I went to college in 1991. Okay,
Right.
so she was sharing some new anime with them, and I said, well, let me just check out what they're watching. And I said, oh, ho, 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 yeah, hey, hey, some of this stuff here is just not appropriate for my young ones to be watching. It
Hmm.
was overly sexualized or extremely overtly violent, And for me, I could watch that all day, but it's just not appropriate for my children. And I'm very sensitive as a father, but then also an educator, right? Because I used to teach kindergarten. So being an educator and being a father now, I know the importance of the things we allow children to absorb, especially in their early years, because for those that are not aware, children are like sponges, and they're going to soak up everything that's around them, whatever you're playing for them, as far as music, whatever sounds, whatever food, whatever visuals, and feelings and emotions and things that they observe. Because it's not just you are what you eat, you are what you ingest, and we ingest through all the senses. So in any case, I'm very sensitive to that. And when I saw that they were being exposed to some of these other things, I said, no, that's not cool. But because I'm a longtime entrepreneur, I said, well, listen, I like the stuff that I came up on. I see my kids are attracted to some of the new stuff as well. Hey, you like that? Daddy can do that too, was my attitude. So in short, it was those experiences that led me to decide to create something in the anime space that was family friendly and child appropriate. And that ultimately is how I came about creating Black Lion and Cubs.
Okay. I totally understand everything you're saying, and I experience that firsthand every day. So you are very vigilant, and it's interesting. I don't know if you experience this. You notice a lot of things you probably wouldn't have if you didn't have young ones watching in television, because you're just so used to it. But I think, you really going back to a lot of the earlier anime. And we're not that far apart. I'm 45, and so as far as a lot of things we grew up on, especially anime is concerned, we'll probably have some of the same tastes and things we grew up with. But those sort of things, and you brought up a very good point. I'm not really big into a lot of anime now. One, because it's just so much. It's so much to try to get into anything new. But it definitely is a shift in just the wide variety of anime that's available. But also, those barriers are broken down compared to, say, 80s, 90s anime as well. And also, I think just storytelling wise, because I go back to Robotech, and I always think of how they dealt with it, even though it's Macross and all the other series put together, but even how they dealt with adult themes, even with the heavy editing, was still very well done. Watching that in like '85, and now it's just kind of out there. So I totally understand, where you're going with it and what really caused you like, hey, this is something that I can do for not just my children, but
Right.
also all the kids out there, because anime is as popular as it ever was, if not more so nowadays. And I would say there is newer anime, and based on what I've seen, there is probably less and less that I would necessarily expose to a child under 10. I'll put it that way. Right. Now, at
Mhm.
least what I would gravitate to. Like, oh, I wouldn't watch that with so and so, and I wouldn't say that back in the day. So I totally understand that. One of the things I noticed about it, though, it's the art style. Where or how did you come up with the art style for Black Lion and Cubs?
Excellent. That's a good question. So, when it all started with, and see, let me be clear that Black Lion and Cubs is not even a year old yet, right?
Okay.
I started this journey in February of 2023 when I said, well, let me start by just drawing a picture of me and my sons in a anime style. So I contracted an artist, and they drew a picture of me and my boys, and it looked cool. I loved it. I said, man, that's amazing. And I shared it with a few of my friends, and someone mentioned that it looked like Naruto. And I said, I don't even know what a Naruto is. You understand? So I looked up Naruto, and I noticed that the artist had basically drawn our faces with with characters, with
Right.
the outfits of Naruto and such. And I said, well, my kids liked it, but I'm a long-time entrepreneur. And one thing I don't believe in is taking other people's creations and just
Hmm.
blackfacing it, if you will.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? I believe that I know for a fact that we're creative enough and intelligent enough to create our own. And so, as an example of that, I said, well, let me refashion this artwork in a way that truly represented who we are, our culture, and what
Right.
we look like. And so that's when I went on a journey of really designing the characters and the outfits and such in a way that represented all the elements that I felt were important for myself and my children and other people's children. Because the thing, and to your point, one of the things that I never thought of when I was a child, but I'm sensitive about now, is the fact that in the 80s, of all the things I mentioned, you never, you seldom saw a black character or heard an African American voice.
Right.
You might have had one. You know what I'm saying? But and even then, sometimes you didn't even know if they were black. I'm not sure, but you
Yeah,
gravitated
true.
to them because you're like, hey, that sounds like us. Or that I think that might be. But in the 80s, we always had to kind of remix things to make it, relevant to who we are. But those days are over, and we have our own now. We have our own, we have our own. So in any case, even with Black Lion and Cubs, I wanted to make sure that I did something that was relevant to and spoke to who we are as a family, but then also other families like mine. So I wanted to first and foremost make sure that I created something that was family friendly and child appropriate. Two, I wanted to represent hip hop culture because hip hop culture is a big part of who I am. And like KRS-One, I wear hip hop culture like my condom. It helps protect me from all the foolishness in the world, right? The same thing I do with African culture, right? African culture is like a condom. It protects us from the foolishness in the world. It protects you because it protects your sanity and your social and emotional well-being when you see other things out there that might attack your centeredness as an African American in this country. But if you're centered well in your own culture, whether it's hip hop or African culture, it protects you. So that's what Black Lion, the characters, the drawing of the characters, the outfits. You see the hip hop, track suits. You see the imagery of the African hieroglyphics on their headbands. You see the hair really, you see the hair, like that. That's our hair. But then also the art style. So I like to tell people I'm a retro king. Like this, I don't know what's happening today. I'm not a fan today. I was a fan in the 80s. So everything, all the art styles and the animations and the comic books and everything that you see is really just a throwback to the things I grew up on. And when I thought about anime in particular, and you're gonna laugh at this, the thing that stood out to me the most when I thought about anime, because notice, I grew up, you and I, we came up in the 80s. No one called it anime back then.
Right.
It was just cartoons. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It was just cartoons. So I didn't even consider, like Voltron, that's just a cartoon, in my mind. So when I thought about anime, my mind went back to Dragon Ball Z.
Right.
Okay. Because that's the only anime that my mind references when I think about it, when I think about true anime. And so, and I said you're going to laugh at this because I personally have never watched an episode of Dragon Ball Z. As popular as it is, as much as I'm familiar with the term Dragon Ball Z, it's just that big. I've never watched it because, again, Dragon Ball Z became popular, as far as I know, in the 90s, and I was already in college in the 90s. So I was done, with all fandom in the 90s. So in any case, Dragon Ball Z is really the reference point for the way I wanted to fashion the characters and their powers and such. It's something like that. And hopefully I've hit the mark with some of the artwork, and some of the other artwork is, different style, but it's all retro. Retro is my thing, man. Retro.
Right. Well, that's one of the things that I got from it, which is why I asked the question. Also, I'm glad you incorporated the hip hop aspect because that was definitely something I was going to ask you, even without knowing, like, oh, you from New York, 70s? Oh, I already know hip hop's a part of this.
All day.
You bring up a good point about DBZ, though, just from a cultural standpoint, because what I would say, because I kind of remember things where I was, and I think when the Cell Saga first really was broadcast,
what's that?
It's like a major arc in Dragon Ball Z. It's like
Okay.
when it really blew up, as far as from a cultural perspective. Not saying it because I'd heard about Dragon Ball Z in high school in the 90s, like midnight. Because I was high school at 94, no, excuse me, 92 to 96. And I remember cats had dub copies of DBZ in high school, but that was before it was really on American TV. It got on American TV, and I remember everybody watching it during the Cell Saga, and that was. I was in grad school, so it was like 2001 or so. So I was thinking, like, I was already in my early 20s at that point. So you're like in the mid 20s by that point. So yeah, I can definitely understand how you gotten out of that, and so on and so forth. And I think that a lot of that is we remember those things that really spoke to us during our younger days. At when, you know, you're right, anime. We didn't call it anime, and you're right. Dragon Ball Z is probably the first instant from a mass market sort of cultural zeitgeist
Right.
where the nation called it anime.
Right.
So
Right.
even in
Right.
high school, we called like Akira is anime. We called it that, but nobody outside of the little geek circles called it anime. Dragon Ball Z had everybody understanding what anime was at that point in time. So I totally understand it because even Robotech, I never thought of that as anime until I got old. I'm like, oh, that's what it is. That's anime. I always reference that because that was I always tell people like that was the first anime that I love. Like I watched every single episode. I own every single episode on DVD because when it came
Mhm.
out back in it was 01 or even 2000 2001. I was side note I was in I worked for the Park Service during the summers at that time. So I was up in Cape Cod and the
Okay.
closest mall was about an hour away from where we were stationed on Cape Cod. So we drove down every week for the whole summer for every what I think they dropped 2 DVDs
Mm.
every week. So literally, my man and I driving down there every week. We bought the DVDs and watched every single episode that was
Wow.
on there because we
Wow.
both cut our teeth on that old school anime. So I look at Black Lion and Cubs and I see that inspiration throughout. But it's something else I want to ask you as well, and it's something else we have in common. Not necessarily Morehouse, but we're both HBCU graduates, and I know that how that has influenced my life going forward.
Mm.
How has that HBCU experience influenced Black Lion and Cubs as well?
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's funny because I heard Karis one talk about hip hop, wearing hip hop as your condom, right? It's like a being immersed in a culture and grounded in a culture protects you as you walk into the world, right? One of the things that I've just posted on my IG is, I created these lion lessons because the part of the whole framework for Black Lion and Cubs is the father who's Black Lion is helping his children, the Cubs, navigate through the world.
Mhm.
And one of the ways he does that is providing what I call lion lessons, right? So one of the most recent lion lessons that I posted on IG was change the world, don't let the world change you. You see? And
Mhm.
so the only way a person can be strong enough to change the world and not allow the world to change them is by being centered in culture, right? And so, I'm centered in hip hop culture, and true hip hop culture, right?
Right.
But then also, I'm centered in African culture, Black culture, knowledge of self. So I'm centered in reality, not artificial intelligence in virtual reality. I'm centered in real reality. So those things help me navigate the world in such a way that I don't follow trends. I'm focused on setting trends. This whole retro thing that I'm doing is setting a trend, because it's not common. I'm going back 20, 30, 40 years and refashioning what we remembered from then
Right.
in 2024. That being said, being a Morehouse grad and going to a HBCU is an experience I want for all of our children and particularly my own children at home because I know what it's done for me. And my wife asked me recently, she said, well, that's not the real world, being around a whole lot of people, a whole lot of Black people. I said, you're right, it's not the real world. But what it does is, like I said, help center you within center your confidence,
Yes.
your self-esteem, so that when you go into the world, you're able to compete with anybody. Doesn't matter who they are, you feel confident enough. And I know for a fact how important that confidence and self-esteem is for a person to be successful at any endeavor. I wish I'm grateful to the HBCU experience. I want it for my children, and I advise it for anybody. And it's worth. If yes, there's an expense, there's a cost. It's worth the investment.
I
It's
agree.
definitely worth the investment.
I agree. I loved how you put that. Now I'm a graduate of Maryland Eastern Shore, so I went for my bachelor's and master's there.
Okay,
Um,
good
I'm
stuff.
from Baltimore originally, so my dad worked at Morgan. My grandma worked at Morgan.
Wow.
Um, my mom ended up going back to school at Coppin when I was in elementary school. So my first college course was sitting there in her bio class. So she
Mm,
ended up getting her bachelor's and master's from Coppin. My sister came behind me at UMES, so she graduated from UMES too with 2 degrees.
wow.
And then my in-laws, wife, brother-in-law, father-in-law, all graduate South Carolina State, and my mother-in-law is a graduate of Knoxville College. So all
Mm.
we know is HBCUs, and what you said is really something that I hold true as well. There is something, you get something extra, especially as a person of color, black person specifically, going to HBCU. You get that confidence. You get, I dare say, you get a networking that you don't get if you go other places. It's funny. I was watching it. I had with I did I don't know, Honda Campus Also Challenge. I think that was probably up and running by the time you were there. But I was very active in that in
You
undergrad and
what?
grad school. Honda Campus All Star Challenge,
Mm-hmm.
HCAS.
No,
So
I'm
I
not
did
familiar.
that. Yeah, I forget when it really started. Because I started in '97 at UMES. I know it'd been going a couple of years, so it may have really gotten kicked off after you graduated. Because Morehouse was very, very big in the scene by the time I got in. But the networking of that and just the HBCU experience in general, I always tell people, look, you don't understand. That has gotten me jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's connected me with so many different people because we all have that common experience. And there's such a, like you said, a confidence that you get by going there compared to, say, going somewhere else. And I totally understand that has shaped everything I've done. So that's why I was very curious to see, especially with this endeavor. And I'm pretty sure it shaped a lot of other things you've done as well. But with
Yeah.
this endeavor specifically, how has that influenced you? So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, big brother. It's it's everything, and you know, you can see it for a person that's as observant as you are. You can see it. You just see the evidence and the of it. Um, in just a variety of different ways. Just like you see hip hop culture embedded in it, you can see it. For those that are aware and cognizant. If you say woke, that's another term. I don't use it that often, but if you're conscious,
Right.
right, that's the term we used to use, right? And it coming up in the '90s, it was conscious, right? So if you're conscious, woke, or what have you, you can see it, and I'm glad that you do because it was important to me that those of us that are initiated see it because ultimately it is parents like us that I want to be able. It's not the children that actually are, if you will, my customer, right?
Hmm.
It's their parents,
Right.
and so the parents. I'm sending messages to my parents. This is one. This is not just appropriate for your children, but it's also going to help you relive your own childhood as well, because now you're seeing things that you remember from that you came up on, and that's how we're really bridging the gap between generations as a
Right.
parent sharing it with a child and saying, oh, I remember that, or that's important for you. We study that, so on and so forth. So I'm glad it's showing. It's that the evidence is showing.
Yeah. And that's smart marketing as well, because one of the things that um, I've noticed, and my wife and I have talked on other people of our age group, we've noticed, particularly in the past 5 years or so, maybe a little bit longer, the reintroduction of other properties that we grew up with, that we hold dear. So
Mm.
we've gotten, I think there was a new show, right? Short cartoon came out, like a lot of things that came back in the past 20. Voltron came back, so they are playing on that nostalgia because, and we are parents now. So
Yes.
we are going to go back to what we know. And we think, oh, we know that property or something we think our kids will like in a newer form. So it's something that holds true in theory. They don't always do, but holds true
Right.
in theory to what we grew up with. But also, it's a way of introducing it to our children so they have sort of the same experience that we had with the previous property. So I think that, and that sort of mentality you have for it, is an excellent play to really get more eyes on the product.
Thank you, my brother. Because I don't know if you know, but I tell people every day my goal is to make Black Lion and Cubs the next biggest thing since Dragon Ball Z. So that's the mission I'm on right now. Trying, working on making it a big deal. I'm not sure how to do it, but I'm working aggressively on it, and I have a team of people. An army. Helping us.
Mhm.
Make that happen. So things are going very well, actually, very well right now.
Okay. Well, I want to a couple different questions, but I want to kind of swerve just from the anime. You
Okay.
have basically multimedia aspirations for this, particularly as a gamer myself. What do the video game, I guess, prospects for this look like?
Okay, well, no, they're already done. So the
Okay.
thing is, when I launched, so when I set things in motion in February, it really just started snowballing for me. I saw the response from my children. Then I shared it with other people, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's so dope! You know, it reminds me of this, it reminds me of that." So I just see, the thing is, I kind of started this conversation in the third quarter of my life. You see what I'm saying? Black Lion and Cubs really is a culmination of 25 plus years of work that I've been putting in. So I've been an entrepreneur since the 90s. My first journey in entrepreneurship was in the mid 90s as a hip hop producer and rapper, right? Because, you know, that's just what we do. You're from New York, Baltimore, whatever, you know, as everybody wants to try their hand at it. So that's what I did.
Understood.
So I got into the music industry, you know, once I moved to Atlanta. And so by 96, I had released my first album. So I didn't just get into music, I got into commerce and business of music and entertainment in particular, or the creative arts and the commerce of that. So I learned how to, you know, design things and market and sell. All these things I learned when I was out there selling cassette tapes, for those that remember cassette tapes, out the trunk like Too Short. You understand?
Right.
So I started in the music industry, transitioned from music into the film industry because, you know, part of music, you know, the music industry is having music video. So I was one of the pioneers in Atlanta, in the independent scene of Atlanta, for having, you know, well-produced music videos, right? And then from the music video, I went to getting into filmmaking. I produced a documentary about what was happening in Atlanta. This is pre-Tyler Perry. You see, so in Atlanta in the early 2000s, you remember this time, in early 2000s, you got the music industry booming and popping.
Right.
You got entrepreneurship booming and popping in Atlanta. You got the film industry starting. Modeling was a big, this before, you know, IG models, right? This is like, you know, everybody's trying fashion. Everything's happening in Atlanta, and I was a part of that. After the film that I put out, my first book came out, The Hustler's 10 Commandments. More people than most know me through that, The Hustler's 10 Commandments. And so when that book came out, that just skyrocketed. That just took off for me. The whole idea of hustling as a mindset and a mentality, and building, you know, and taking the science of success and putting it in these 10 principles under the context of hustling, because that was big at the time, right? That idea of making a way for yourself. So my point is, through all of those years, I've been sharpening my sword and, you know, just learning how to monetize creative creations. You see, that's music, that's film, that's publishing books. Because I was a former teacher, the bigger part of my business became consulting with schools and school districts. So at this point, that's the majority of the work that I do now. I have contracts with schools, train teachers, you know, help turn around low performing schools. And as a part of that, I developed more curriculum materials, books, games, and things of that nature. When COVID hit, I started developing more, you know, web-based properties to serve schools. So I say all of that combined is now how I'm able to create such a behemoth when it comes to Black Lion and Cubs. So although it started in February, by the time I launched it in July, I launched it with 3 episodes of the cartoon, with the motion manga. So I took the comic and turned it into a film, if you will, or a animated series as well. I had a audio book, because that's from the music. I turned it into audio, just like we talked about audio. I created an audio version, so I have the audio book for that. And then I had produced a video game. Actually, by the time I launched, I already had 2 games, and at this point, I have 3 games completed for Black Lion and Cubs. I just haven't made all of this public because, you know, it doesn't make sense to release so much all at one time.
Right.
But I did so on July 17th of 2023 to put the world on notice that there's a new kid on the block. You understand? And we're here to play. We're not here to play. We're here to win. So I made history by being the first independent production company to release all these types of properties all at the same time. And when I say release or launch, I'm not saying I launched a Kickstarter. These were public, available for people to watch or play, and so on and so forth. So I have 3 for Black Lion and Cubs. There are 3 series. In each series, there's 3 parts. So for the Anime, there's one series called Valley of the Kings. For Valley of the Kings, I have the anime, I have the comic, and I have a video game for and the the audio book for Valley of the Kings. I have the same type properties for the second series, which is called Sands of Time. Sands of Time also has an anime. It's available right now. You can watch it on Black Education Station. Um, then I also have a comic and a video game and the audio book for that. The third one is still in development.
Okay. I think I know the answer to this. Have you done the convention circuit yet? And since all this is still pretty new.
Yeah, so I've been checking it out. It is very new. So I know conferences very well because
Hmm.
that's what I do. That's what I've been doing in the music industry and the film industry. So, one of the things I learned is that you guys don't call them conferences, you call them cons, right?
Yes.
So there's the Momo cons and the Dragon cons and all these other cons. And ever since I've done so, I'm like, man, these cons are all over the place, man.
Yes.
To be honest with you, the anime industry reminds me of the hip hop industry back in the mid 90s. You understand? It reminds me of Atlanta, that whole excitement about something new and fresh that not everybody knows about yet, but it's bubbling. And if you know, that's what it
Right.
reminds me of. And that's part of why I'm so excited now, because it's reinvigorating, a part of me that's been dormant for some time, because I got, in the 90s, I was in these streets, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Promoting and marketing, going to the clubs, going to the conferences, making a name for myself. I left that phase of my life once I got into working with schools and kind of quieted down, and just, I just quieted it all down because things were in a good momentum. But now with this new project, Black Lion and Cubs, and this new industry, it's just, man, I feel like I'm in the 90s again, man. I'm ready to rock and roll, get back in these streets, hit up the cons. So I've been to a few, checking them out, see how people operate and then what people do, what they don't do. But like with everything else, I don't do things the industry way.
Right.
What I've learned is that there's great benefit to, studying industries and then bringing in innovating, disrupting industries by
Right.
doing things countercultural. You see, so even with the anime space right now, I'm disrupting it because it's a Japanese-led industry. Here
Right.
I am, a black man with black characters telling stories and featuring African culture and so on and so forth. I'm already disrupting it. Then another way I'm disrupting the industry is by having something family friendly and child appropriate. So I'm disrupting what people are used to. For better or for worse. And then the way I'm going to market it and the way I'm going about it, I don't know how other people do it, and it doesn't, and that's good because I'm doing it the way I would do it from the music industry standpoint or from the
Right.
film industry standpoint. So I'm bringing all those competencies to the anime industry, which is constantly giving me what people know as competitive advantage because I'm moving in a way in a space that differentiates myself from everybody else.
Understood. Yeah, because I was thinking, even in that aspect, I know that there seem to be a lot more of the smaller cons, but they're specifically focused on blurs, black nerds, us.
Mhm.
And there are more and more of those. 'Cause I think there's one in Atlanta I saw popping up sometime in April, which made me think of that. But I frequented BlurCon up here in the DC area since it started. And I know like DreamCon is probably the biggest one, but I know there are more and more that are popping up. And then there has been HBCU Con here in this area.
Mm.
I was thinking that, those sort of specialty conventions would just be the reception for what you're doing would really be great. And also I'm thinking networking possibilities as well,
Mm.
because as I said before, there are a lot of cats that are not doing the same thing, but are making similar moves, trying to bring properties to the screen, much like you are. So I'm just thinking networking and that sort of thing as well would be really awesome and beneficial. But also as a consumer, I'm thinking, these are the spots I go to because I want to see creators like yourself who are
Mhm.
bucking the mainstream, not going through, the big comic companies or what have you, and doing everything that, is pretty much on their own. And like, those are people I want to support
Well, I'm
when
glad
I
to
go
know
to a
that.
convention.
I'm glad to know that because, in my experience has taught me that sometimes it's better, you know, when it comes to branding and marketing, a good strategy is not to blend in, but to stand out, right?
Right.
And so one of the ways I do that is by not focusing on the black cons, right? Because everybody there is black and everybody's doing, you know, got a comic or, you know, doing something similar to what I'm doing. So if you're looking for that, well, then there's me there and there's like 10 other people that are doing, you know, similar things. So if I go to a national con or a con that's, you know, inclusive of all people, now I'm not dime a dozen. I'm the diamond in the rough. You see what I'm saying?
Understood.
And in that space, now as the diamond in the rough, I found a greater appreciation for what I do from not only black people but people from all nationalities and races that that are excited about seeing something new, right? So I've done in fact, I was in Baltimore. I was at BlurredCon. I checked it out. I wasn't exhibiting there, but I checked out BlurredCon, saw how they did there. But then I went to another one, particularly in Baltimore this past summer, and it was huge, man. It was thrown by Paramount. You know, again, it was, you know, it had black people there, but we were, you know, maybe 20% of the audience. The vast majority was white people in Baltimore, right? But the irony is, it was just such an amazing thing to see white kids and Asian kids coming up to the Black Lion and Cubs booth and saying, "I want that." You know what I'm saying? I want that. And I've had black kids come up say they don't want that. You see what I'm saying? So it's just an interesting experience. And again, if I'm going to make Black Lion and Cubs the next biggest thing since Dragon Ball Z, it has to be beyond black people. You understand? It has to be something that I make a worldwide phenomenon. So thank you for that. But I just wanted you to know that I'm expanding beyond that because for those reasons. Yeah.
Understood. You know, you have a product that you're trying to get out there, so I totally understand.
Anybody tell you look like Haile Selassie? I'm sure you get it all the time.
You know, that is the first time I've
no way.
Yes. Let me tell you, all through my life, I've gotten I would say the past 20 years, I've gotten John Legend. Then like 20 years ago or so, when Lionel Richie had that resurgence, like, oh, you look kind of like Lionel Richie. I've never gotten Haile Selassie though. That's new. Okay.
Son, listen, if you can pull up a picture right now, just Google Haile Selassie. I know.
Oh no, I know what he looked like.
I know you know, but the audience, pull it up for your audience.
I'll put that in post.
Yeah, man. Because I'm telling you, if I could pull it up right now, man, right on spot, you look just like him, man. Wow. Yes, maybe you didn't have the beard back then. You know what I'm saying?
It's interesting. Okay. Yeah. So let me ask you this. So where can everybody find what you have out now?
Okay, so everything, you know, I've learned that sometimes less is more. And so as much as I could have, you know, pages on all the sites, I'm siphoning all attention to very few places. So number one, anything that anyone wants to know about Black Lion and Cubs can be found officially on our website, blacklionandcubs.com. That's the central hub for all things Black Lion and Cubs. From there, you can find some of the other places to go. For example, if you want to watch the anime, that will take you to Black Education Station. I have a distribution deal with Black Education Station. It's a streaming network like Netflix and Disney, but it's Black owned and it's for the education of Black children specifically. Very proud of what they're doing. Yeah, a lot of people don't know there's a Black Education Station. And I challenge people, you know, if you're Black or a parent of Black children and you got Netflix and Disney, right, and you believe in Black excellence and supporting Black business, please find it in your heart or your mind or your spirit to also have Black Education Station, right? And be proud of the fact that, yeah, you should pay for that too. You pay for Netflix and Disney. Come on now. And again, go to the site. You'll see it looks just like the rest of them. So we don't have any excuses anymore begging in need for begging Disney or Netflix to put a, you know, show some diversity or representation matters. We got our own now. So in any case, that's just a shout out to Black Education Station. That's where the anime is playing exclusively. So you will never be able to watch Black Lion and Cubs without watching it on Black Education Station. Do we have a YouTube channel? Yes, we do, but there's just a couple little commercials right there. That's it. It's just strictly used for marketing. And then I also have the IG at Black Lion and Cubs for people that you just want to stay connected that way. So really those four places: the website, blacklionandcubs.com, Black Education Station to watch the anime, YouTube at Black Lion and Cubs, or IG at Black Lion and Cubs. I keep everything centralized and consistent.
Okay. Are the manga and video game available for purchase as well?
So the manga is on the motion version is on Black Education Station as well.
Okay.
I just got the proof for the graphic novel, so
Okay.
I decided to turn the episodes into one graphic novel. So the manga will be available. The comics or graphic novels will be available soon. Over the next couple of months. First, Valley of the Kings is going to come out, and then Sands of Time. The video game, for those that are interested, they can go to my IG, go to the IG, actually the website or the IG, and they can play the first video game, Valley of the Kings, and they'll find the Valley of the Kings video game to be just like what you remember from the 80s on the original NES. It's a side scroller, and you play. It's gonna remind you of Mega Man or Castlevania. It's designed just like that, man.
Okay, cool. And a quick question about the manga though. Is it just digital? It's going to be print and digital?
Yeah, so it's digital now on Black Education Station. It'll be in print in the next couple months. That's the graphic novel. It'll be a physical graphic novel. And they're looking good, man. I just got the proof literally hit my doorstep. I'm out of town now, so but because I would show you right now, but the proof for the graphic novel just arrived at my doorstep. My wife sent me a picture. I said, "Oh my God, this thing is looking amazing." So soon we'll have that available, and that's just going to take us to a whole nother level. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Hotep, I thank you for your time, my brother. I appreciate it. I wish you much success this year and beyond, because this just sounds like a great property. You guys make sure you check everything out at blacklionandcubs.com, and all of the links that you've seen flash across your screen here. You know where to find us. Webster Style, the man, the voice, the fragrance, always bring you the latest and greatest creators. We out.
Peace.